Hello, everyone. My name is Aaliyah Petzet-Grant with NEADS. I'll be facilitating our event today with StatsCan. I would just like to start the event with a land acknowledgement. So the National Education Association of Disabled Students would like to begin this event by acknowledging the land on which we gather today is the traditional and unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. As settlers, we're grateful for this opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of people who've taken care of this land for thousands of years. We are grateful to have this opportunity to present on this territory, and we continue to commit to explore and make meaningful contributions to the calls of action that result from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. All right, so today we have our lovely trio from StatsCan. We have Rachel Boutin, Accessibility Secretariat. She has worked with the government for an astounding 17 years and has worked for over 10 organizations in over 30 positions, a very busy lady. So I'm glad she could take the time to be here with us today. And then we have Tony Labillois, the Macroeconomic Accounts Branch manager. Tony is the director of the public sector at Stats Canada with over 32 years of experience in national statistics and team management. And I can't even get, he has a lot going on, so I'll let him be the one to fill you in on his exciting life. And then finally, we have Jeremy Plaunt, the Dissemination Division. He is a husband, father, and a public servant, a musician. Like, what can't he do? And he's a very keen advocate for disability inclusion, and I'll let him describe himself because also very amazing. And we'll get this started with Rachel, and she can introduce herself.
Thank you, Alia. So, bonjour tout le monde. Bonjour
Hi,
du Québec,
hello,
provenant
Quebec.
directement de la banlieue de Montréal en cette journée
from the region of Montreal,
ensoleillée.
From this beautiful sunny
I'm here
day.
Today. I'm very happy to have this opportunity to present, my career path, as I'm somewhat very proud of what I've been able to do. So I've been in the public service for over 17 years, as you said, and I've been in many capacity and worked around. I had the opportunity to try different elements to grow within the organization. So I did start as an admin assistant at the entry level and was able to work at the census, which is the best school for everybody. If next time there's a call out for the census, join the census. It's amazing working for the census. I see Tony smiling. So the census changed my life, really. So I did learn with the census how to improve and learn more about the government, the procedure, how to manage staff, because I did at one point get many staff and work very hard. So by learning, please mute yourself if you're not speaking. I just heard something. So I did learn a lot, and then decided that, and I knew at that point that the government was the way for me, because the government allows me to, move around and keep with the benefits, keep my pension, keep all of that, and keep learning. Alors, j'ai travaillé dans différentes organisations.
So I worked in many organizations, Statistics Canada. It's my third time now. I hope it's the right one. I worked also for Service Canada, for the School of Public Service, 3 days. Développement Economics Canada, also Correctional Services Canada. I worked for the Commissions of Human Rights.
I've been moving quite a bit, always working on different subjects related to to helping people, always focusing my time by helping those in needs, participating in an equity seeking group, talking a little bit about disability, about inclusion, but inclusion even a broader level when I was at the correctional service, as I was training inmates to make sure they will have, a job, a real job when they got out of prison. So I really did enjoy my time over there, and I've learned so much. And through, the pathway, I went from entry level, and now I can say I'm 5, 6, 7 level higher, moved around, applied, got to know people, got to network, got to meet Tony and now Jeremy, got to meet amazing people that are doing a great difference in everybody's life. So I'm very fortunate. And, through all that, at the beginning of my career, I did get I did get the diagnosis. So I have multiple sclerosis, and did thought that my career will be over then. And as you can see, it didn't change anything, and if it even helped me, take my career in my hand and move forward and ask for what I needed, and accommodation. And COVID, did simplify. Now everybody works from home. It's much more easier, but we learn to what we have, and my disability just helps me see things differently and provide a perspective on the work we're doing, and helps me empathize a little bit more with employees and colleagues, and making sure that even though I don't know everything, I really don't know, then I call Tony. I don't know everything, but what I do know is who to call if I have a need specifically, or if I want a specific lens on the project or programs we're doing. So right now I'm with the Accessibility Secretariat, working on StatCan first multi-year accessibility plan, as we are planning, as it's asked within the Accessible Canada Act, to become fully accessible by 2040. We already have a lot done. We have a lot to do. So I'm helping the different departments to make sure to build and to put in place a plan for us to reach that goal. So enjoying all of that. And, as work is not all that we do, I also have a personal life. This weekend, I'll be gardening. I'm pretty sure I will not be the only one putting in place their garden this weekend, but I'm also a painter and trying to start a career with my paintings. So as you can see, we're only limited, but what we have in our mind, the system will allow us in the government to try and to do different stuff. So I don't know if you want to know more, but I think if there's a question at the end, I can fill stuff in for some subject, but I think I'm going to let my colleagues talk now.
Excellent, thank you. So next in our lineup is Tony, the one and only. And there you go, Tony, and you are ready to go.
Merci beaucoup pour l'invitation.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm always flattered when I'm invited in such an event.
The future of our country, the students, and the future employees of my division, maybe. I'm always recruiting. I started in Statistics Canada many years ago, and I thought I would stay for a year or two. So be careful if you join us. The career may be so fruitful that you will never want to leave. I started in 1989. Seems like history to you. I basically decided to apply at StatsCan after studying in statistics. And à ce moment-là, on parlait pas de sciences des données, on parlait de statistiques.
At the time, we didn't talk about science of data, we talked about statistics. I studied at Université Laval. I had regular childhood, good regular studies, but I liked partying, meeting friends. And it was a bit to challenge myself that I decided to apply for the government at Statistics Canada. I succeeded at the written exam. I was invited for an interview, and already at that time, they offered accommodations, something they never offered in university.
For my written exam, or the questions I would see before the interview or during the interview, and I would get a bit more time to write the exam. And so I was like, wow, this is good. This is the government takes into account the fact that I was born with low vision. For me, it's normal vision. I've always seen that way. Tout d'un coup, je voyais un employeur qui me permettait d'exprimer mes compétences en me donnant les outils pour le faire de mon mieux. J'ai trouvé ça intéressant. Et puis,
So I was
je ne
given the
savais pas
tools
où était Ottawa
to
vraiment
do my
sur une
best,
carte.
and I didn't know exactly where Ottawa was, except for the map. So I went to visit, and I decided to go there for a couple of years. And one of the first things that my boss told me that time, even back then, just to tell you how it goes back to a long time ago, to make sure that everybody develop its own potential. Back then, my boss offered me some accommodations. If you need any equipment, she said, we want to make sure that you are properly tooled because we hired you for your skills. So we want you to reach your goals here.
I foster an inclusive, accessible, and equitable community, professional community of employees. I've done several jobs in Statistics Canada. I'm not like Rachel, I didn't go to other departments as much, but I probably tried many corners of StatsCan during my career. And now, as it was mentioned, I'm the director of Public Sector Statistics Division. We do statistics at StatsCan on all kinds of aspects on the social and economic life and environmental aspects of Canada and Canadians. We have a very vast mandate and lots of opportunities. There's no wrong door, by the way, to enter in the government. There's all kinds of doors that you can choose to take. And then when you get in, you have even more opportunities because suddenly you get access to a number of selection processes that can lead you in different career paths and make you develop your learning and your competencies and increase your contributions as well. As a director now, I manage more than 70 people. 2 years ago, there were only less than 40 people. My division is expanding. I'm mentioning that because StatsCan is expanding very much these years. So there are lots of opportunities for new people to join us. On cherche les talents, les gens compétents, les gens intéressés à apprendre pendant toute leur vie, à contribuer pendant toute leur vie, et qui vont nous amener un éclairage nouveau
to contribute during all their life, and who will bring a new perspective to our work.
Ma division s'occupe par exemple de
my division
dépenses,
is taking care of revenues, expenses,
des administrations
and
publiques,
balances for public administration, federal government, provincial and territorial governments,
locaux. Et on fait des
local
finances,
governments as well,
financières selon une norme internationale de
produce financial statistics according to the international standards for macroeconomic accounts. So it's part of the calculation of
les formules pour distribuer plus de 88 milliards de dollars
and to distribute more than 88 billions between the federal and the provinces, the fiscal transfers, the financial fiscal transfers, and so they're using our figures to allocate the funds so that Canadians have an equal level life.
So it's very
throughout the
country.
country.
One example among others. We touch environment, labor, we touch youth, we touch health or manufacturing or mining or all kinds of aspects in society and economy and environment. We have an accessibility secretariat where Rachel is doing a great job with others. We have also a duty to accommodate group that helps making sure that we get the equipment that we need for our employees. And we have a committee of persons with disabilities that meets monthly, this is a group of volunteer employees that choose to give their views, give their advice, share their wisdom about how we evolve on certain aspects of our workplace. And that's very stimulating. We also have statistics that we produce with the Canadian Survey on Disability and with other vehicles. The Canadian Survey on Disability right now is in the field, so you may even have received a questionnaire, and I will encourage you to complete it if you received one. This is a post-census survey, so it comes after the census, and it will publish next year some fresh results on the different dimensions of the lives of people with disabilities. So this is another example of a statistical program on the social side. And there's a number of things there's opportunities on our services that support the statistical programs and in the programs themselves. There's a target of hiring more than 5,000 persons with disabilities over a few years in the whole of public service. StatsCan wants to make sure that we have our share of employees with disabilities because we don't want to leave any talent on the table. It's a very tight labor market right now. Le marché du travail est très, très compétitif. Et on veut être sûr qu'on puisse bénéficier de tous les talents qui sont disponibles. Et vous faites partie de ces talents.
Reach out
c'est pour ça que pour moi, c'est un plaisir. J'entends la période de questions puis à vos réflexions.
Really glad.
I'm also on LinkedIn if you want to connect with me. Rachel is also on LinkedIn and I think Jeremy as well. We are approachable. We are looking for exchange and your questions and we are really fortunate that we were invited here. On that note, je vais laisser la parole à Jérémy.
Thank you so much, Tony. We'll pass the torch over to Jeremy. There we go.
C'est super. Merci Alia, puis merci Tony et Rachel. C'est un grand plaisir d'être ici aujourd'hui. Je vais parler plutôt dans ma langue maternelle, anglais, mais si à la fin vous avez des questions en français, n'hésitez pas de les poser dans votre langue maternelle, puis je vais répondre aussi en français. So just saying that I'll be speaking largely in English today, but it's also easier for the translators. But if you have any questions, please do ask them in French, and I will of course respond in French. So again, thanks for inviting me today. It's interesting, you know, some people, some persons with disabilities have amazing stories where they've received support all throughout, and some have much tougher paths. And as someone who's been both an employee and a manager over my last 20 years in the public service, I have seen both of those things, and now as a manager here at Statistics Canada, I'm absolutely sort of dedicated to providing that supportive environment that I received throughout my before my career path. And I'll sort of give you a little storyline. I'll start by telling you a little bit about my career path and a little about sort of disclosing my disability and accommodations, and then just a little bit on working in the public service with a disability, because there is a little bit of a timeline in there. So I was lucky enough to join the public service in 2002. I was a year out of school, and very rarely, and I just finished working for the National Art Gallery, and I understand this is quite rare. I was actually able to immediately start working in my field, which is a mixture of history and political science and population research. And apparently it's very rare to actually start immediately working in what you studied. So I count myself extremely fortunate. And a little side anecdote, I was hired in the directorate responsible for sponsorship at Canadian Heritage. So for those of you who can remember this far back, my directorate had $30 million frozen out of their budget in 1 month because the Gomery inquiry started. And they kept me on just long. They had to cut costs, so I couldn't stay. But they kept me on just long enough I was the sacrificial goat carrying files to the auditors because everybody else was too scared. So they said, send the kid. So I got to be the one carrying files. It was great. So I escaped to Environment Canada. And this is important because while I was continuing to work on public opinion research and population research, and I added all sorts of skills in communications and marketing, performance measurement, stakeholder relations. This is really important because I was working on online surveys for Canadians on environmental issues. And I met this amazing man who many people may know the name of, Jeffrey Stark. He's now the director of Shared Services, Accessibility, Accommodation, and Adaptive Computer Technology Program. And he taught me so many things about making surveys accessible, about legends, labels, alt tags, long descriptions, tooltips, using proper heading structure, how to adapt for screen reader usage, how to make sure that your research is keyboard friendly for those people who can't use a mouse. Truly, and this was in the mid 2000s, this was an eye-opening event. And then I really wanted to expand my skills and experience on the human side of government, programs and services for persons, not just persons with disabilities, but all Canadians. And so I joined Employment and Skills Development Canada in 2009. One of my very first files was conducting research on awareness and take-up of the Registered Disability Savings Plan. And this is important because despite Jeff's lessons and all he taught me, we screwed up. The survey wasn't accessible. And I remember getting a number of interesting calls from the Canadian National Institute of the Blind. They're now great friends, but they weren't at that point. And a number of student associations who said, hey, we can't take your survey, what's going on? And this was, there's nothing like a really good learning experience. And I had the opportunity to work for ESDC for 13 years, and a great many of my files as benefits ESDC involved research and consultation with smaller segments of the Canadian population. And it was really great because of those lessons I learned, I was able to make sure there's something in research called a non-response bias, where if you do research, but say you have not included a particular topic or a particular population, there is a bias in your response because some people have been left out. So say you do only an online survey. Well, what about the people who don't use computers? What about people for whom computers aren't accessible? What if your survey isn't accessible? You've left all that out. What if you do just a telephone survey, but you have no other alternative ways to collect that data? So the work, those experiences that I got allowed me to work on some major files, and I won't really list them, but I will just say, things on labor market opportunities for persons with disability, flexible work arrangements, stuff to do, developing the Accessible Canada Act. These were huge files, and I was usually leading the research component of them, and it was because of all these experiences that I'd had that I was able to ensure that I would say our non-response bias was minimal because we were able to reach everybody, and this was something I worked incredibly hard at. But it was also at this time at ESDC that my disability started to say, hey, remember me. So I'm physically disabled. My disabilities stem from a chain of injuries that started in my teenage years in sports. Not every 15-year-old gets a sports medicine doctor or regular appointments at one of Montreal's biggest rehab clinics. I had a final massive injury in the late 90s while I was at McGill, which was sort of the start of my path towards chronic visible disability. And it's funny, I think of NEADS, and I think of NEADS as actually one of my they're all my favorites, but NEADS is one of my big favorites because I would never have survived my university career without the assistance of the McGill office for students with disabilities. If you imagine you come to the foot of the campus, and McGill's on a hill, it's on a mountain, and you arrive into campus on a February cold morning with your cane, and you look up this mountain and you think, how the heck am I going to get anywhere? And in the 90s, McGill wasn't as helpful as they could have been, but fellow students and faculty were. And that's where sort of my awesome story starts, because I can't tell you how fortunate I was for all the accommodation and support I received. I remember having to take exams in being excused from taking exams in one of the big halls, and my program director offering me his office to take exams on his computer. My biggest university choir, and this story will always stay with me. It looked like I was standing on the edge of the bass section when in fact my fellow choir chairs had provided me with a stool so I could sit, because I couldn't stand at the time for very long. And this was the same choir that had a team of huge hockey players and football players who would carry my colleague Aaron, who was in a multi-100-pound electric wheelchair, up and down several flights of stairs to get to and from practice every week. So that's the kind of experience that I had in university. It was, you know, despite the overall university policies, which weren't there yet, the faculty and the students totally were. But then with years of therapy, I didn't really need any accommodation until 2010. But my injuries had been getting worse. I was going to need surgery. It was invisible, which made it very difficult. And when your disability is difficult, it makes it very difficult to ask for help. And because people look at you and they say, well, you're not disabled, you know. An elderly woman in the grocery store asks you to pick something heavy for her and you say you can't. Or you're moving offices at work and they say, can you carry those boxes? And you can't. Or in my case, you know, opening a heavy door to another part of the building, a heavy security door, you do it and you're in pain for 3 weeks, right? Post-surgery, I needed a standing desk, and you'll like this. I needed a standing desk and lighter computer so I could carry them around. There's just no avoiding it. But there was no accommodation to be had. The wait for them was abominable. But this is, again, is where people come in. This is where the human connection comes in. So some colleagues of mine on the floor, including next kinesthesiologist, we were really lucky, who all had back problems and problems. So we just, I bought a cheap $30 standing pad, you know, standing pads you get from potted plants at Rona. They work. And my colleagues brought in some hammers and a screwdriver, and then we retrofitted my desk and several other desks. We just ripped them out, popped them up, and made them higher. So we didn't even have sit-stand desks. We could only stand. But, you know, so what did my accommodation cost? Yeah, $30 and a screwdriver and a hammer. You know, I never forget my assistant deputy minister, you know, who had been fighting for us and not getting anywhere. He was so happy when we did this. He was so proud of us. I remember him raising the issue with the architects working on something called Workplace 2.0, and I became a guinea pig for the first sort of mass-produced electrically adjusted sit-down desk at ESDC, which was amazing. My ADM fought for my DTA and my disability duty to accommodate to get me a lightweight laptop, but he couldn't get one. And this is one of those great examples of the people, right? People fighting against the policy. The light bulb went off in his head, and he requested one for himself. Right. And of course, when the ADM requests a light, you know, as a Surface Pro, to get him one, right? So what did he do? He got it and then he gave it to me, right? And then he laughed at IT and then he told them about it. And then all of a sudden, just opened the floodgates, and all of a sudden, anybody who got one, anybody who needed one could get one, right? So it's these personal stories that is my story, a story of incredible support. I remember in 2012 when I just come back from surgery and I was at my worst. And I needed a lot of support. My director happened to have terrible back problems, and we found out that nearly my entire division, or half my division, had some form of physical or mental disability. And she was saying, I'm the luckiest director. She laughed, we laughed. She said, I'm the luckiest director in government because I've met all my sort of affirmative action tick boxes. But in reality, it was amazing because we all worked together to support each other. And now, I just spent the last 3 years working for the Accessible Canada Directorate, where accommodations of any kind were like water. You know, in Canada, you needed it, you got it, right? The entire place was accessible by design, the ability to work from home and work so easy to get, any IT things you needed, so easy to get. And I finally got a chance to recover some of the ground I'd lost to pain and inability and chronic pain. And I got to work on the Accessible Canada Act to boot, which is a huge thing. And then now here I am, and I'm doing the sort of the greatest thing of both worlds. I'm a researcher sort of by experience, but I'm also a passionate advocate for accessibility. And now I get to work for the Center of Expertise on Accessibility in the Dissemination Division at StatsCan, in a place that does research. So I get to basically help make research more accessible to Canadians and to my own colleagues. And that's huge. And, you know, along the way, I've had to work the chance to work with colleagues who are deaf, who are blind, who have MS, who are living with incurable cancer, wheelchairs, people who are wheelchair athletes or they're quadriplegics. I've worked with a colleague who the only way he works is with a metal tube attached to the grill of a football helmet, and that's how he taps the keyboard. So if you ever decided to develop a thing that only worked with a mouse, please don't, because Mike won't be able to use it. I've experienced mental health issues. And those of you who know chronic pain know that you're not going to get away from mental health issues. It's lots of fun. We've had people with fatal allergies. One of my colleagues nearly died from a severe shellfish allergy at work, so bad that the department knew that if they take him to court, they knew that they would be successfully prosecuted for assault. So, you know, there's lots of amazing stories in the public sector that are, a lot of them are really good and that are bad, and some of them are really bad. And you'll hear lots of people tell some terrible stories, and they're true, right? There's terrible stories of discrimination. But there's also some who've risen to become leaders. And I think the really important part of this is that, again, I've had the great fortune to be in the public sector for 20 years, and the horror stories have got less and less and less. And the good stories and the stories of good support, or I was just in a meeting earlier this morning where we were saying, hey, how do we support this person, right? Ultimately, the reason I am here today and where I am today is because not only has these stories of progression of persons with disabilities being able to be just far better supported and just become just the issues of equality becoming far easier to handle. It's all happened, and the reason I am where I am today is because not only because of those great stories of support, but also because I know that I can be a help for others and I can help create those success stories. And so I'm really thrilled to be finally here at StatsCan, which has been a dream of mine for as long as I can remember. But I'm also here because I have that experience of supporting people that I know that when they come and work for me, that they don't have to suffer those horror stories. When you come and work for me or for Tony or for Rachel, you're going to get the support you need to grow and to thrive. And, you know, hey, come work for StatsCan because we're where it's at. So there we go. I'll turn it back to you, Alia.
Yes, thank you so much, Tony. You've touched on so many amazing points, and we're going to open up the Q&A right now. So if you have any questions, you can send them to me. You can use the raise hand function. And I think I'll kick things off with a question open to all three of you. And we'll go in the order that you presented in. So my question to you is, what advice do you have for young people entering the workforce when it comes to accommodation and accessibility? Like how do you, like what advice would you give to them when entering the workforce as an individual with a disability?
Well, I'm guessing I'm the first one on that. I would have loved this one maybe to go to Tony. What I would say, well, you know, it depends what you think about accessibility and accommodation. So for me, you know, when you come in, you know, embrace who you are. Self-IDing has been hard for me to do at the beginning, but when I decided to do it and own it, you know, I'm always self-declaring when I work in self-IDing. And I have to admit, I've never got a position because I did self-ID. But at least I made myself known that, you know, this is part of who I am, not all I am, but part of who I am. So I would say self-ID. Look, follow us on LinkedIn. I think we're on Instagram. We're on so many things. Look into GC jobs, as many opportunities are there. Register to, you know, to be a student job, a co-op opportunity with the government, and come and be curious, you know. Maybe StatCan will be the place you'll thrive and you'll be good, but if not, it's not a problem. Come and try and find out, you know, what's right for you. And, you know, you had somebody that speaks about, you know, more programs, statistician. I'm in HR. So StatCan has all kinds of positions. You don't have to be a statistician to be at StatCan. I'm sure not. So I would say that, be yourself. And then if you need accommodation, you don't have to divulge why you need it, but ask for it. You know, they're there to make sure that you're at the same level as the other one to, you know, to do the test and all of that. Well, still gonna hire you because of your merit. But, you know, let's break down barriers and ask for whatever accommodation you need. So I don't know, Tony, would you add anything else? All right, Jeremy's is in agreement with me.
A few things. I've been champion for persons with disabilities in StatsCan for more than 20 years now. I started that in 2002 after an assistant deputy minister had asked me to, among my corporate hats, help make the link between the committee of persons with disabilities I was talking about earlier and senior management to identify the key priorities and the key solutions that we should bring to the table for improving our participation of everyone in the workplace and towards the results of the organization. So as Jeremy was saying, rightly so, there's less stories that are bad. There's more stories that are success stories over the years. And my advice is, as Rachel said, make sure that from the beginning, you identify yourself. You ask for accommodations. Even as I was mentioning for myself, I did that in my first application form. Et puis, ça m'a fourni des mesures d'accommodement, même dans mon processus.
Even in the selection process, I asked for it. From my first interview, and always following that, when I applied in higher positions at Statistics Canada.
If it's an invisible disability, you have a choice to mention it or not to mention it. Even if it's a visible disability, you have a choice to pretend it's not there. It's a question of acceptance. I remember at some point in my life, I was a very shy, complex guy, and I didn't really accept myself as I was. I'm born with low vision, as I mentioned earlier. Pour moi, c'est une vision normale. C'est la vision que j'ai toujours eue.
For me, it's a normal vision. It's what I've always had. I like doing photography, doing pretty extreme things like rafting and many interesting and stimulating experiences.
In general, I like to try things. So at some point, some events in my life made me change my perception of myself. It made me realize that my disability, my low vision was not just a disability. It had created ability. It had shaped my character. It had shaped my personality, and not necessarily in a bad way at all. So as soon as I started to accept myself better, I was able to expect that others could accept me for who I am. And I had to trust others that they would accept me for who I am. And that's what we can tell you at StatsCan. We have, like Jeremy was talking about university, and when people around him were trying to help, and we're doing that immensely for him. À Statistique Canada, on est là pour s'entraider aussi. Quel que soit
Statistics Canada, we're there to help you as well, no matter your origins, your gender, your sexual orientations, your capacities, your abilities.
We want you to be part of the team with your contributions. You have to have the right competencies for the jobs that we have, but there are so many jobs that I predict that most of you could have a future in StatsCan, if not certainly in the public service. I mean, StatsCan is 6,500 employees. The public service, probably more than 200,000 employees. So, avec 200,000 jobs, puis même juste 6,500 et plus à StatsCan, non?
So with 200,000 positions in the public service, many of them at Statistics Canada, you for sure can find something. So dream big, be open to possibilities. You'll discover yourself, and people will trust you on things that you don't even trust yourself yet. If people trust you, you are not allowed to doubt yourself. Be proud. Be confident that if someone gives you a position, you can do it, and use that to grow as a person and to contribute.
Always ask questions. The dialogue is very important. We're talking about accommodating people. I mean, you're at the heart of the accommodations you need. You should be there to even initiate with the new accessibility passport that we're putting in the public service, that is there for you to describe as an employee what your needs are in terms of accommodations. You're there to start the conversation with your supervisors. The supervisor can't be expected to know everything. On a tous une réalité différente comme personne avec une limitation d'activité. Et la réalité différente, c'est aussi dans qu'est-ce qu'on a appris à faire.
We all have a different reality. So it's also about how we've learned to do things, how we handle the situation. It's not because you see the way that I see that you need the same tool. We're all different. So you probably have different tools, different techniques, and you may even teach me things that I don't know, and vice versa.
A greater success. We're stronger together.
I know that we want to get to other questions. I will just add one thing, and merci, Tony and Rachel. I will just add one thing. A lot of times when we talk about accommodations, there's a lot of physical accommodations or hardware or software accommodations. I've had the great pleasure of working with and actually hiring a number of people, with neurodiverse backgrounds, autism and Asperger's. And you know, the way that I've worked with these colleagues, who are some of my great friends, to, you know, the accommodation has never been, of course, physical. It has been more mental. It has been communication. Sometimes it's been noise. It's been direct. But of course, they brought such an amazing talent to the public sector, and of course, their amazing personalities. And so anybody on this call is listening who is a member of our neurodiverse community and is wondering, you know, is there, you know, how do I fit into this story? Man, you fit in so well. You have no idea how well you're going to fit in. And just what Tony said, you know, reach out. And as Rachel said, you know, reach out on all the job applications that we have out there, and just come to the interview, and don't hesitate. You know, if there are fears that you have or some challenges that you have that would make it difficult for you to participate in a regular hiring process, tell us what those are, because I'm telling you right now that certainly if you're applying to something that I post, I'm going to accommodate you, because I know that everybody has a different path, right? And we're here to just bring all those paths together. So again, no matter what the issue is, don't be afraid. Let us know, because we can certainly help you make it happen. So Alia, turn it back over to you. I'm sure we have time for some more questions.
Yeah, we have a few questions. So I think what we'll do is just go by whoever has a response for it. So our first question is from Peter. So I have often asked for accommodations at Stats Canada and have not always been granted this. Things may be changing, but there are still a lot of managers or supervisors that have no experience with persons with disabilities. They think accommodations are benefits and not rights. So how do we sensitize the average supervisor to these issues?
I can take that one for fun. I will always find pockets in my organization or elsewhere where the managers don't really fully understand. And that's why I'm saying the managers can't be expected to understand everything, and nor the reality of everyone. That's why I mentioned we have a duty to accommodate team in StatsCan, and the duty to accommodate team can be approached and can discuss, ease the discussion with the supervisors. Then there's a group, Jeremy mentioned Jeffrey Stark, and there's a group that we consult at Shared Services Canada, so that a person can find the best accommodations. And there's even a loan bank where people can borrow equipment to try it and see how it improves their productivity or not, and then eventually find the best optimal setup. And yeah, there will be supervisors that feel that they don't know what to do, or they have to say no, or they feel even that they're in the system where they have no power to even make those accommodations possible. That's also where you're champion for persons with disabilities, myself, in StatsCan. can intervene when suddenly things are blocked for too much and for too long, and help to find positive outcomes to situations like this. I've done that over the 20 years, and again, I'm not going to discuss any particular examples here, but I have plenty that come to mind where we were able to be successful, and some others where we have frankly to say that we were not so successful because there were limitations in our systems or our processes, and at the time we could not necessarily accommodate fully someone. But some people have taken a turn in their career for the best after not necessarily being able to fulfill the job they were supposed to fulfill given the restrictions we had. I have to be honest, not everything is perfect yet, but we're certainly working actively on it with Rachel, Jeremy, and many other people. We have more and more allies in this agency and more champions, and it's a culture shift that we're working on every day.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We have quite a few questions coming in, so I think I'll just move on to the next question. All right, so our next question is from Ruben, and says, thank you for this presentation. I was wondering whether you have any advice for students who have disabilities related to mental illness or neurodevelopment disorders that may impede the speed at which they are able to complete work at, and the amount of work they can take on, and the amount of time they may acquire, etc. As you pointed out, the government sector is incredibly competitive, and disclosing a disability that maybe potentially affects one's ability to meet deadlines, work long hours, etc., could be detrimental to their chances of being hired. By not disclosing, they also risk setting themselves up for failure and worsen their own health.
How about if I could answer that one. So, and I've had direct experience with that. One of the, and actually this happened certainly during the pandemic where I actually had the chance to hire someone who had some of those issues, but I've also worked with many people with various issues and fears related to that. And actually, when I had a severe little breakdown after I worked myself too hard for too many years in 2018, I was one of those people who had to be accommodated quite extremely for quite some time. You know, there's a growing shift in how we assign work in the public sector, and we recognize that there are so many different ways to get the job done. And as Tony said, it's not perfect, and there are a lot of managers and supervisors who have not heard this yet and who have not realized this yet. So I will not say we're perfect, but you know, even in my last two jobs, working with people from sort of the neurodiverse community and people with mental health issues and who needed, sometimes they couldn't work full time. Their work schedules were different. I had one person who had a sleep disorder, and like starting early in the morning was just an absolute non-starter for her. You know what? We made it work. We also we shaved parts off other jobs. You've heard of work sharing. We shaved parts off other jobs and gave some of those parts that were sort of more steady and ongoing work to some of those individuals who couldn't stay past a certain hour, who couldn't work as fast, but whose work was still brilliant, right? That's the whole thing. Is if a person is brilliant and has an incredible mind and is thoughtful and innovative and just gets in there and does the work, sometimes you carve out parts that don't need the 5 p.m. deadline or the 3:30 Friday terror from the Privy Council office, things like that. And you carve those pieces out and you give them to other people who may not be able to meet those deadlines. I will say it's not going to be a great fit for everybody everywhere. I spent 17 years working in communications, and even though I was able to carve out some pieces for some of my colleagues who required those accommodations, those accommodations were harder to find in such a fast-paced group where, you know, you would have sometimes only 30 minutes to, you know, complete a ministerial request, right? Or, you know, oh, you know, the minister says on Friday, I need a roundtable on Monday in another city with people from all over this area, you know, yet you have no choice. You have to move mountains. So those jobs won't be for everybody, but there are lots of opportunities out there, and I've seen it happen very successfully multiple times. So I would say raise your hand, self-declare, because there are places for you, and managers who are thoughtful and innovative and also realize that they need certain types of people are going to take advantage of those opportunities when they find them.
Thank you.
I may
we have,
I just want to let people know that, you know, when we say self-ID, self-declare, this is in the form. So you never have to talk to your manager about your disability if you don't want to. If you feel comfortable, I do invite you to do it. It will make much more simpler. But when we're talking about, it's checking the box, but it's making sure that you're counted as somebody that may need support in all of that, and you don't need to say disclose your disability to ask for accommodations. So I just want to make that sure. But of course, we're all hoping that you find a manager for which you'll feel comfortable divulging your disability, talking really freely with them, and being able to evolve with. But I just wanted to point that out.
Je dois intervenir ici, je ne peux résister. Je pense que
I'd like to add something. I think it's not always necessary, but it's often a good thing to self-identify with one's manager, with one supervisor. Sometimes it's not even a disability. For example, I have some employees that have to go to the daycare to pick up their kids at a certain hour. I have persons that, for different reasons, they're natural helpers, for example, they have some constraints in their schedule and they need accommodations in their schedule. And Jeremy brought that up before. Those are simple accommodations. I don't want to reduce the complexity of our limitations in our activities, but it's definitely common. It's really common that a supervisor should make accommodation with a person without that person disclosing anything about his medical life.
Period of your life, or even forever, you realize that you're more efficient at part-time, all mornings or all afternoons only. I will still take you if you're able to contribute to the results of the team. I just have to plan for it. If suddenly you have a paternity or maternity leave, I'll still take you because eventually you will come back. And even before you go, you will contribute. There's all kinds of reasons why human beings in a workplace are working at different pace or at different speeds or with different constraints, different tools and so on. And we tend to self-inflict prejudgments, des préjugés. On a tendance à s'en mettre sur le dos, de dire, ils ne me prendront jamais parce que telle chose.
We think that they'll never accept me because of that or that I'll never be able to do that. So don't see the impossible, see the possible.
With your manager and your colleagues when you're comfortable is important, because sometimes it's what you can do compensate for someone else who can't do it, and vice versa. See what you can do, not the limitations. See the abilities and the possibilities.
That was beautiful, Tony. Just excellent words of wisdom. So unfortunately, we only have 2 minutes left of the event. So I'm going to start with some closing remarks. We weren't able to get to all the questions. So what I recommend, these three are very friendly. Reach out to them on LinkedIn if you have more questions. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer them. And also after the event, if you want to stick around, I'm sure I know they're very busy people, but they might be able to stick around and answer a few more questions if you want to stay after.
I'll stick around for another 5 minutes at least.
Okay, I think there was a question about the person with the champion with the persons for disabilities. A few questions about that in the chat. So I think that'd be great if you could stay and answer some of those. So okay. I'm just going to say thank you everyone for attending. Thank you to our amazing speakers. And I just want to add, we're having our next event June 10th at 12 p.m. And this, we're going to host the disabled graduate students across Canada, and they're going to talk about disability and graduate studies. And we'll be joined by Margaret Maggot, Calvin Prowse, and Karen Tang. And they're going to discuss what it's like going through the graduate studies process as a student with a disability. And also Kathleen Clark will give a brief presentation on the SSHRC funded research on disability in graduate studies. I'm also going to add our social media in the chat, our websites, and I'll also share, so I looked into StatsCan social media and whatnot, so I'll share that in the chat. And yeah, and that's all from me. And thank you so much for coming to our event. We're done.